General H.R. McMaster will become the National Security Advisor. He also has known for a long time General Keith Kellogg. Keith is going to be Chief of Staff, and I think that combination is something very, very special.
And I look forward to joining the national security team and doing everything I can to advance and protect the interests of the American people.
I'm very honored and privileged to serve alongside H.R. McMaster, who I've known for years as well. He's a great statesman and a great soldier. Thank you, sir.
And so are you. Thank you very much. What a team.
And there you have it, the Commander-in-Chief a short while ago announcing his new National Security Advisor and the new Chief of Staff at the National Security Council. Let's bring you up to speed on who H.R. McMaster is. He is now the Director of Army Capabilities, the Army Capabilities Integration Center, I should say, at Fort Eustis in Virginia. He led a major counterinsurgency effort at Tal Afar in Iraq as a commander in 2005. He was one of the architects of the surge policy in Iraq that is credited with turning around that conflict. And he is the first active duty military officer to serve as National Security Advisor since Colin Powell back in the Reagan administration. One final note about General McMaster: he's also the author of a very important book, Dereliction of Duty, Johnson, McNamara, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Lies That Led to Vietnam, a detailed archival study relying on new documents and tapes that was published in the late 90s, documenting how Lyndon Johnson and his inner circle deceived and circumvented the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the policymaking sessions that deepened American involvement in Vietnam. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times; Julie Pace, White House correspondent for the Associated Press; and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Julie, you've covered a lot of White Houses. Now we have a military man at the top of the NSC and a military man as the Chief of Staff over there. Should people be concerned about a quote-unquote militarization of the NSC?
Well, it has something that has come up not just at the NSC, but also if you look at Trump's cabinet, he's quite fond of generals. At the same time, it is rare in Washington to find bipartisan support for a president's pick, and you saw that today with H.R. McMaster. You saw Democrats, Republicans who are both supportive of Trump and those who are not supportive of him coming out and praising this pick. This is a widely respected person. The hope that a lot of people who are more skeptical of Trump, the hope that they have is that he will bring some order to the NSC and that he will be a strong voice who will be able to break into what has been quite an insular group of advisors around President Trump.
Charlie, if you are the State Department, let's say, and you have your butting heads, as they typically do, with the Defense Department over some key policy issue or some initiative that's being prepared, and it's going to be adjudicated by the National Security Advisor, who's supposed to be the person that collates all these views and then goes to the President, should you feel comfortable that these two generals now going to be running the National Security Council are going to give diplomats, let's say, a fair hearing in these tussles?
Well, I think that, no matter who he had picked for this spot, the State Department's going to have kind of a tough slog at the White House in terms of getting diplomats to win some of those battles. I think that clearly Donald Trump prefers. He does like the military guys, without a doubt. And I think he likes the idea of having forceful people in those positions. One of the things I think is most appealing about McMaster is the fact that the book that he wrote, Dereliction of Duty, about the lies in Vietnam. There are a lot of similarities between what the problems that we had in Vietnam. It wasn't a lack of firepower. It wasn't a lack of money. It was a lack of commitment. It was a lack of vision. It was a lack of strategy. And I think that you could say that that's probably true today about our war against terror. And I think that having a guy like that who believes, who has been able to pick apart those kinds of problems, General Mattis is a guy who believes very strongly in having a dynamic strategy for dealing with things. And I just think it all indicates there are a lot of good indicators there that this administration is serious about trying to come up with a real strategy for combating terrorism.
Charles.
I think what's encouraging about him is that the book that he wrote on Vietnam, and also he was the architect, one of the intellectual architects of the surge in Iraq. In both instances, he's going against the prevailing assumptions and worldview. The surge we all now praise in retrospect. People were very skeptical of it, even within the Bush administration. In the military, he was kind of revolutionary, and he was there. So it tells you this is a guy who will say what he thinks and promote what he wants. The other interesting element of the announcement was that the president went out of his way to praise John Bolton and to say that even though he was one of the 4 candidates, he didn't get the job. He said, we want him in some other job in the White House, and it'll be interesting to see what he gets and where he ends up.
The president said we'll be talking to him. Rush Limbaugh, on his very popular radio show, had something to say about the efforts to delegitimize this president by his opponents on the left.
They have a formula, they have a blueprint for destroying Republican political officials they don't like. It's not going to work on Trump. He doesn't fit that mold.
Julie?
Well, I mean, obviously a lot of people see in the Trump circle see the media as the opposition, and I would just say this: the media is not here to take Trump down. That might come as a disappointment to some people on the left.
Some segments of the media surely are, no?
But I think if you go to the briefing room on any given day at the White House, most of us are there to get facts. And the problem that we've had over the last several weeks is that and even going back into the transition, we have had a hard time getting facts. If you look at this episode with General Flynn, this was an incident where we were getting incorrect facts. It turned out that people up to the vice president were getting incorrect facts, and that was his downfall, not some effort to demonize someone that Trump had picked to serve in his White House.
Let's play very quickly this extraordinary exchange between the White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, and our colleague Chris Wallace from Fox News Sunday.
You get about 10% coverage on the fact you did a very successful meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the UK, the Prime Minister of Canada.
We covered all of those news conferences live. Everybody did.
Right, sure. Yeah, right. But then as soon as it was over, the next 20 hours is all about Russian spies.
But you don't get to tell us what to do,
right? Nothing's happening.
You don't get to tell us what to do any more than Barack Obama did. Barack Obama whined about Fox News all the time, but I got to say, he never said that we were an enemy of the people.
Well, this correspondent might take a different view of all of that, but Charles, is it apt to compare the treatment of the news media by the Trump administration with the treatment of the news media by the Obama administration?
I think it's absolutely worth noting, and of course Julie is exactly right. There are a lot of very dedicated journalists who go into the White House or wherever every day and have every intention of they're looking for facts. But there is, they may not, the majority of reporters may not be out there to take down Donald Trump. But there is an alarming percentage of reporters out there who also don't want to cover him fairly and don't want to give him the benefit of the doubt, even in cases where he deserves it. Whereas, the same people covering Barack Obama gave him the benefit of the doubt at every turn, and I think that is and I think that's what when Donald Trump talks about the fake news media and all this kind of stuff, he gets away with sort of smearing everyone with a broad brush, but there are enough bad actors out there to give him cover to make those claims.